All right, I think we're about ready to start then. So, those were the dulcet tones of Calm Trues um, from his Iteration album, a song called Vacuum with an ending in an E. All right, so today I am gonna have to wind up cutting this one a little short um, due to some scheduling conflicts. But that's okay, because I will still get this stuff in, which is good. But it may mean that instead of only having 10 parts, we'll have like 11 or maybe 12. I sincerely doubt it'll be 12. It'll probably be 11. We'll see how far we get today. Maybe next week we'll do an extra long one if I can. Okay, so last time on Snow Crash. Oh, I should probably do the basic intro stuff. Hello, thank you for tuning into Storytime Saturdays. I am your narrator, Fraggeth, and today we're going to be reading more from Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash. Like we've done the past 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. Except for the time when we had a gap due to a whole lot of stuff dropping on my head at once. So last time, YT has been introduced and attracted to Raven, international man of seriously dangerously badass. Um, and because she basically got abducted. Hiro got introduced to the glass-eyed, the mafia man with the glass eye, who he has nicknamed Fisheye, or is nicknamed Fisheye. Um, and well, after a series of events involving trying to get certain things out of certain individuals. They were on a boat, and the boat got blown up. Largely thanks to Raven, because Raven is a dangerous individual. Um, and of course, the nuke sub that the Orthos own and control, the Soviet nuke sub. Um, that's about it, really. So right now, Hiro is floating around in a life raft with Fisheye, some sniper dude, and the former skipper of the boat that they were on. And they are heading towards the raft, drifting inexorably. And YT is on the raft at the moment with Raven, which is either the safest or least safe place you could possibly be on the entire face of creation, barring, I don't know, the surface of a sun, which would be very unsafe. So let's get this cracking. Ah, so stuffy. Weather front moving through. Fortunately, has not manifested as a sinusoidal headache or pressure gradient, which is good, I guess. All right, let's get a little comfy here and start rocking it. Got my fluids. All right. And hopefully my recording software will work today. Wouldn't that be radical? If it doesn't, I'm going to jump up and down and make angry noises. Or at least I'll breathe and exhale extremely heavily a couple times. Okay. Chapter 49. Sometimes they see boats in the distance. A couple of these even swing close by to check them out, but none of them seems to be in that rescuing mood. There are few altruists in the vicinity of the raft, and it must be evident that they don't have much to steal. From time to time they see an old deep-water fishing boat, 50 to 100 feet long, with half a dozen or so small fast boats clustered around it. When Elliot informs them that these are pirate vessels, Vic and Fisheye prick up their ears. Vic unwraps his rifle from the collection of hefty bags that he uses to protect it from the salt spray, and attaches the bulky sight so that they can use it as a spyglass. Oh my gosh, it is one of those mornings. Detaches the bulky sight so that they can use it as a spyglass. Hiro can't see any reason to pull the sight off the rifle in order to do this, other than the fact that if you don't, it looks like you're drawing a bead on whatever you're looking at. Whenever a pirate vessel comes into view, they all take turns looking at it through the sight, playing with all the different sensor modes, visible, infrared, and so on. Elliot has spent enough time knocking around the rim that he has become familiar with the colors of the different pirate groups, so by examining them through the sight he can tell who they are. Clint Eastwood and his band parallel them for a few minutes one day, checking them out, and the Magnificent Seven send out one of their small boats to zoom by them and look for potential booty. Hiro is almost hoping they get taken prisoner by the Seven, because they have the nicest looking pirate ship, a former luxury yacht with exo-set launch tubes kludged to the foredeck. But this reconnaissance leads nowhere. The pirates, unschooled in thermodynamics, do not grasp the implications of the eternal plume of steam coming from beneath the life raft. One morning, a big old trawler materializes very close to them, congealing out of nothing as the fog lifts. Hiro has been hearing its engines for a while, but didn't realize how close it was.
Who are they?
Fisheye says, choking on a cup of the freeze-dried coffee he despises so much. He's wrapped up in a space blanket and partly snuggled underneath the boat's waterproof canopy, just his face and hands visible. Elliot scopes them out with the sight. He is not a real demonstrative guy, but it's clear that he is not very happy with what he sees. "That is Bruce Lee," he says.
How is that significant?
Fisheye says. "Well, check out the colors," Elliot says. The ship is close enough that everyone can see the flag pretty clearly. It's a red banner with a silver fist in the middle, a pair of nunchucks crossed beneath it, the initials B and L on either side.
What about 'em?
Fisheye says. "Well, the guy who calls himself Bruce Lee, who's like the leader, he got a vest with those colors on the back.
So?
So it's not just embroidered or painted, it's actually done in scalps. Patchwork, like." "Say what?" Hiro says. "There's a rumor, just a rumor, man, that he went through the refuse ships looking for people with red or silver hair so he could collect the scalps he needed." Hiro is still absorbing that when Fisheye makes an unexpected decision.
I want to talk to this Bruce Lee character, he says. He interests me.
"Why the hell do you want to talk to this fucking psycho?" Elliot says. "Yeah," Hiro says. "Didn't you see that series on I Spy? He's a maniac." Fisheye throws up his hands as if to say the answer is, like Catholic theology, beyond mortal comprehension.
This is my decision, he says.
"Who the fuck are you?" Elliot says.
"President of the fucking boat,"
Fisheye says.
"I hereby nominate myself. Is there a second?"
"Yup," Vic says, the first time he has spoken in 48 hours.
"All in favor say aye,"
Fisheye says. "Aye," Vic says, bursting into florid eloquence.
"I win,"
Fisheye says.
"So how do we get these Bruce Lee guys to come over here and talk to us?"
"Why should they want to?" Elliot says. "We got nothing they want except for poontang."
"Are you saying these guys are homos?"
Fisheye says, his face shriveling up.
"Shit, man,"
Elliot says.
"you didn't even blink when I told you about the scalps." "I knew I didn't like any of this boat shit."
Fisheye says.
If this makes any difference to you, they're not gay in the sense that we usually think of it, Elliot explains. They're het, but they're pirates. They'll go after anything that's warm and concave.
Fisheye makes a snap decision.
Okay, you two guys, Hiro and Elliot, you're Chinese. Take off your clothes.
What?
Do it. I'm the president, remember? You want Vic to do it for you?
Elliot and Hiro can't help looking over at Vic, who is just sitting there like a lump. There is something about his extremely blasé attitude that inspires fear.
Do it or I'll fucking kill you.
Fisheye says, finally driving the point home. Elliot and Hiro, bobbing awkwardly on the unsteady floor of the raft, peel off their survival suits and step out of them. Then they pull off the rest of their clothes, exposing smooth bare skin to the air for the first time in a few days. The trawler comes right alongside of them, no more than 20 feet away, and cuts its engines. They are nicely equipped. Half a dozen Zodiacs with new outboards, an Exocet-type missile, 2 radars, and a 50 caliber machine gun at each end of the boat, currently unmanned. A couple of speedboats are being towed behind the trawler, like dinghies, and each of these also has a heavy machine gun. There is also a 36-foot motor yacht following them under its own power. There are a couple of dozen guys in Bruce Lee's pirate band, and they are now lined up along the trawler's railing, grinning, whistling, howling like wolves, and waving unrolled Trojans in the air.
Don't worry, man. I'm not gonna let 'em fuck you.
Fisheye says, grinning.
What you gonna do? Elliot says. Hand them a papal encyclical? I'm sure they'll listen to reason,
Fisheye says.
These guys aren't scared of the mafia if that's what you have in mind.
Elliot says.
That's just because they don't know us very well.
Finally, the leader comes out, Bruce Lee himself, a 40-ish guy in a Kevlar vest, an ammo vest stretched over that, like a diagonal bandolier, samurai sword. Hiro would love to take him on, nunchucks, and his colors, the patchwork of human scalps. He flashes them a nice grin, has a look at Hiro and Elliot, gives them a highly suggestive, thrusting thumbs up gesture, and then struts up and down the length of the boat one time, swapping high fives with his merry men. Every so often, he picks out one of the pirates at random and gestures at the man's Trojan. The pirate puts his condom to his lips and inflates it into a slippery ribbed balloon. Then Bruce Lee inspects it, making sure there are no leaks. Obviously, the man runs a tight ship. Hiro can't help staring at the scalps on Bruce Lee's back. The pirates note his interest and mug for him, pointing to the scalps, nodding, looking back at him with wide, mocking eyes. The colors look much too uniform. No change in the red from one to the next. Hiro concludes that Bruce Lee, contrary to his reputation, must have just gone out and gotten scalps of any old color, bleached them, and dyed them. What a wimp. Finally, Bruce Lee works his way back to midship and flashes them another big grin. He has a great, dazzling grin, and he knows it. Maybe it's those 1-carat diamonds crazy glued to his front teeth.
Jammin' boat, he says. Maybe you, me swap, huh?
Everyone on the life raft, except for Vic, just smiles a brittle smile.
Where are you going? Key West?
Bruce Lee examines Hiro and Elliot for a while, rotates his index finger to indicate that they should spin around and display their business ends. They do.
Quanto?
Bruce Lee says, and all the pirates get uproarious, most of all Bruce Lee. Hiro can feel his anal sphincter contracting to the size of a pore.
He's asking how much we cost, Elliot says. It's a joke, see, because they know they can come over and have our asses for free. Oh, hilarious, Fisheye says.
While Hiro and Elliot literally freeze their asses, he's still snuggled up under the canopy, that bastard.
Boon missile like?
Bruce Lee says, pointing to one of the anti-ship missiles on the deck.
Bugs? Motorola's? Poon missile is a harpoon anti-ship missile. Real expensive, Elliot says. A bug is a microchip. Motorola would be one brand, like Ford or Chevy. Bruce Lee deals in a lot of electronics. You know, typical Asian pirate dude. He'd give us a harpoon missile for you guys? Fisheye says. No, he's being sarcastic, shithead, Elliot says. Tell him we want a boat with an outboard motor, Fisheye says. Want one Zode, one kicker, fill her up, Elliot says. Suddenly, Bruce Lee gets real serious and actually considers it. Scope clause, chum sayin'. Gauge and gag. He'll consider it if they can come and check out the merchandise first, Elliot says. They want to check out how tight we are and whether we are capable of suppressing our gag reflex. These are all terms from the raft brothel industry. Homeboy scope like 12s to me, ha ha ha. Us homeboys look like we have 12-gauge assholes, Elliot says, i.e. that we are all stretched out and worthless. Fisheye speaks up on his own. No, 410s, totally. The entire deck of the pirate ship titters with excitement. No way, Bruce Lee says. These homboys, Fisheye says, still got cherries up in there. The whole deck erupts in rude, screaming laughter. One of the pirates scrambles up to balance on the railing, gyrates one fist in the air, and hollers, Bakanazu malai gano malai aria mano no pop no abzu. By that point, all the other pirates have stopped laughing, gotten serious looks on their faces, and joined in, bellowing their own private streams of babble, rattling the air with a profound, hoarse ululation. Hiro's feet go out from under him as the raft moves suddenly. He can see Elliot falling down next to him. He looks up at Bruce Lee's ship and flinches involuntarily as he sees what looks like a dark wave cresting over the rail, washing over the row of standing pirates, starting at the stern of the trawler and working its way forward. But this is just some kind of optical illusion. It is not really a wave at all. Suddenly, they are 50 feet away from the trawler, not 20 feet. As the laughter on the railing dies away, Hiro hears a new sound, a low whirring noise from the direction of Fisheye, and from the atmosphere around them, a tearing, hissing noise, like the sound just before a thunderbolt strikes, like the sound of sheets being ripped in half. Looking back at Bruce Lee's trawler, he sees that the dark wave-like phenomenon was a wave of blood, as though someone hosed down the deck with a giant severed aorta. But it didn't come from outside. It erupted from the pirates' bodies, one at a time, moving from the stern to the bow. The deck of Bruce Lee's ship is now utterly quiet and motionless, except for blood and gelatinized internal organs sliding down the rusted steel and plopping softly into the water. Fisheye is up on his knees now, and has torn away the canopy and space blanket that have covered him until this point. In one hand he is holding a long device a couple of inches in diameter, which is the source of the whirring noise. It is a circular bundle of parallel tubes about pencil-sized and a couple of feet long, like a miniaturized Gatling gun. It whirs around so quickly that the individual tubes are difficult to make out. When it is operating, it is in fact ghostly and transparent because of this rapid motion, a glittering translucent cloud jutting out of Fisheye's arm. The device is attached to a wrist-thick bundle of black tubes and cables that snake down into the large suitcase, which lies open on the bottom of the raft. The suitcase has a built-in color monitor screen, with graphics giving information about the status of this weapons system, how much ammo is left, the status of various subsystems. Hiro just gets a quick glimpse at it before all the ammunition on board Bruce Lee's ship begins to explode.
See? I told you they'd listen to reason,
Fisheye says, shutting down the whirling gun. Now Hiro sees a nameplate tacked onto the control panel. Reason, version 1.0B7, Gatling type 3mm hypervelocity railgun system, Ing Security Industries Incorporated. Pre-release version, not for field use. Do not test in a populated area.
Ultima ratio regum.
Fucking recoil pushed us halfway to China, Fisheye says appreciatively.
Did you do that? What just happened? Elliot says.
I did it. With reason. See, it fires these teeny little metal splinters. They go real fast. More energy than a rifle bullet. Depleted uranium.
The spinning barrels have now slowed almost to a stop. It looks like there are about 24 of them. I thought you hated machine guns, Hiro says.
I hate this fucking raft even more. Let's go get ourselves something that goes, you know? Something with a motor on it.
Because of the fires and small explosions going off on Bruce Lee's ship, it takes them a minute to realize that several people are still alive there, still shooting at them. When Fisheye becomes aware of this, he pulls the trigger again. The barrels whirl themselves up into a transparent cylinder, and the tearing, hissing noise begins again. As he waves the gun back and forth, hosing the target down with a hypersonic shower of depleted uranium, Bruce Lee's entire ship seems to sparkle and glitter, as though Tinker Bell was flying back and forth from stem to stern, sprinkling nuclear fairy dust over it. Bruce Lee's smaller yacht makes the mistake of coming around to see what's going on. Fisheye turns toward it for a moment, and its high, protruding bridge slices off into the water. Major structural elements of the trawler are losing their integrity. Enormous popping and wrenching noises are coming from inside as big pieces of Swiss cheesed metal give way, and the superstructure is slowly collapsing down into the hull like a botched souffle. When Fisheye notes this, he ceases fire.
Cut it out, boss, Vic says. I'm melting, Fisheye crows. We could have used that trawler, asshole,
Elliot says, vindictively yanking his pants back on.
I didn't mean to blow it all up. I guess the little bullets just go through everything.
Sharp thinking, Fisheye, Hiro says.
Well, I'm sorry I took a little action to save our asses. Come on, let's go get one of them little boats before they all burn.
They paddle in the direction of the decapitated yacht. By the time they reach it, Bruce Lee's trawler is just a listing, empty steel hull with flames and smoke pouring out of it, spiced by the occasional explosion. The remaining portion of the yacht has many, many tiny little holes in it, and glitters with exploded fragments of fiberglass. A million tiny little glass fibers about a millimeter long. The skipper and a crew member, or rather the stew that they turned into when the bridge was hit by Reason, slid off into the water along with the rest of the debris, leaving behind no evidence of their having been there except for a pair of long parallel streaks trailing off into the water. But there is a Filipino boy down in the galley so low, unhurt and only dimly aware of what happened. A number of electrical cables have been sawn in half. Elliot digs up a toolbox from below decks and spends the next 12 hours patching things together to the point where the engine can be started and the yacht can be steered. Hiro, who has a rudimentary knowledge of electrical stuff, acts as a gopher and limp-dicked advisor. Did you hear the way the pirates were talking before Fisheye opened up on them? Hiro asks Elliot while they are working.
You mean in pigeon?
No, at the very end. The babbling.
Yeah, that's a raft thing.
It is?
Yeah. One guy will start in and the rest will follow. I think it's just a fad.
But it's common on the raft?
Yeah, they all speak different languages, you know, all those different ethnic groups. It's like the fucking Tower of Babel. I think when they make that sound, when they babble at each other, they're just imitating what all the other groups sound like.
The Filipino kid starts making them some food. Vic and Fisheye sit down in the main cabin below decks, eating, going through Chinese magazines, looking at pictures of Asian chicks, and occasionally looking at nautical charts. When Elliot gets the electrical system back up and running, Hiro plugs his personal computer in to recharge its batteries. By the time the yacht is up and running again, it's dark. To the southwest, a fluctuating column of light is playing back and forth against the low, overhanging cloud layer.
Is that the raft over there?
Fisheye says, pointing to the light, as all hands converge on Elliot's makeshift control center.
It is,
Elliot says.
they light it up at night so that the fishing boats can find their way back to it. How far away do you think it is?
Fisheye asks. Elliot shrugs.
20 miles? And how far to land?
I have no idea. Bruce Lee's skipper probably knew, but he's been pureed along with everyone else.
You're right, Fisheye says. I should have set it on whip or chop.
The raft usually stays at least 100 miles offshore, Hiro says, to reduce the danger of snags.
How are we doing on gas?
I dipped the tank, Elliot says, and it looks like we're not doing so well, to tell you the truth.
What does that mean, not doing so well?
It's not always easy to read the level when you're out to sea, Elliot says, and I don't know how efficient these engines are, but if we're really 80 or 100 miles offshore, we might not make it.
So we go to the raft,
Fisheye says.
We go to the raft and persuade someone it's in his best interest to give us some fuel. Then back to the mainland.
No one really believes it's going to happen this way, least of all Fisheye.
And, he continues, while we're there, on the raft, after we get the fuel and before we go home, some other stuff might happen too, you know? Life's unpredictable.
If you have something in mind, why don't you just spit it out? Hiro says.
Okay, policy decision. The hostage tactic failed, so we go for an extraction.
Extraction of what?
Of YT.
I go along with that, Hiro says. But I have another person I want to extract also, as long as we're extracting.
Who?
Juanita. Come on, you said yourself she was a nice girl.
If she's on the raft, maybe she's not so nice,
Fisheye says. I want to extract her anyway. We're all in this together, right? We're all part of Lagos's gang.
Bruce Lee had some people there,
Elliot says.
Correction. Had.
But what I'm saying is they're going to be pissed.
You think they're going to be pissed? I think they're going to be scared shitless,
Fisheye says.
Now drive the boat, Elliot. Come on, I'm sick of all this fucking water.
Okay. That was a long chapter. Jeez Louise. Chapter 50. Raven ushers YT onto a flat-assed boat with a canopy on top. It is some kind of river boat that has been turned into a Vietnamese/American/Thai/Chinese business establishment. Kind of a bar/restaurant/whorehouse/gambling den. It has a few big rooms where lots of people are letting it all hang out, and a lot of little tiny steel-walled rooms down below where God knows what kind of activity is taking place. The main room is packed with low-life revelry. The smoke ties her bronchial passages into granny knots. The place is equipped with a shattering third-world sound system, pure distortion echoing off of painted steel walls at 300 decibels. A television set bolted onto one wall is showing foreign cartoons, done up in a two-color scheme of faded magenta and lime green, in which a ghoulish wolf, kind of like Wile E. Coyote with rabies, gets repeatedly executed in ways more violent than even Warner Brothers could think up. It's a snuff cartoon. The soundtrack is either turned off completely or else overwhelmed by the screeching melody coming out of the speakers. A bunch of erotic dancers are performing at one end of the room. It's impossibly crowded. They'll never get a place to sit. But shortly after Raven comes into the room, half a dozen guys in the corner suddenly stand bolt upright and scatter from a table, snatching up their cigarettes and drinks almost as an afterthought. Raven pushes YT through the room ahead of him, like she's a figurehead on his kayak, and everywhere they go, people are shoved out of her way by Raven's almost palpable personal force field. Raven bends down and looks under the table, picks up a chair off the floor and looks at the underside. You can never be too careful about those chair bombs. Sets it down, pushed all the way back into the corner where two steel walls meet, and sits down. He gestures for YT to do the same, and she does, her back to the action. From here she can see Raven's face, illuminated mostly by occasional stabs of light filtering through the crowd from the mirrored ball over the erotic dancers, and by the generalized green and magenta haze coming out of the TV set, spiked by the occasional flash when the cartoon wolf makes the mistake of swallowing another hydrogen bomb, or has the misfortune to get hosed down again with a flamethrower. A waiter's there immediately. Raven commences hollering across the table at her. She can't hear him, but maybe he's asking her what she wants. "A cheeseburger!" she screams back at him. Raven laughs, shakes his head. "You see any cows around here?"
"Anything but fish!" she screams.
Raven talks to the waiter for a while in some variant of Taxalinga.
"I ordered you some squid," he hollers. "That's a mollusk."
Great. Raven, the last of the true gentlemen. There is a shouted conversation lasting the better part of an hour. Raven does most of the shouting. YT just listens, smiles, and nods. Hopefully he's not saying anything something like, "I enjoy really violent abusive sex acts." She doesn't think he's talking about that at all. He's talking politics. She hears a fragmented history of the Aleuts, a burst here and a burst there, when Raven isn't poking squid into his mouth and the music isn't too loud.
"Russians fucked us over. Smallpox had a 90% mortality rate. Worked as slaves in their sealing industry. Seward's folly. Fucking Nipponese took away my father in 42, put him in a POW camp for the duration. Then the Americans fucking nuked us. Can you believe that shit?"
Raven says. There's a lull in the music. Suddenly she can hear complete sentences.
"The Nipponese say they're the only people who were ever nuked. But every nuclear power has one aboriginal group whose territory they nuke to test their weapons. In America, they nuke the Aleutians. The Amchitka, my father,"
Raven says, grinning proudly,
"was nuked twice. Once in Nagasaki, when he was blinded, and then again in 1972, when the Americans nuked our homeland."
Great, YT thinks. She's got a new boyfriend, and he's a mutant. Explains one or two things.
"I was born a few months later,"
Raven continues, by way of totally hammering that point home.
"How did you get hooked up with these orthos?"
"I got away from our traditions and ended up living in Soldotna, working on oil rigs,"
Raven says, like YT is supposed to just know where Soldotna is.
"That was when I did my drinking and got this," he says, pointing to his tattoo. "That's also when I learned how to make love to a woman, which is the only thing I do better than harpooning."
YT can't help but think that fucking and harpooning are closely related activities in Raven's mind. But as crude as the man is, she can't get around the fact that he's making her uncomfortably horny.
"I used to work fishing boats, too, to make a little extra money. We would come back from a 48-hour halibut opening. This was back in the old days when they had fishing regulations. And we'd put on our survival suits, stick beers into the pockets, and jump into the water and just float around drinking all night long. And one time we were doing this, and I drank until I passed out. And when I woke up, it was the next day, or maybe a couple of days later, I don't know. And I was floating in my survival suit out in the middle of the Cook Inlet, all alone. The other guys on my fishing boat had forgotten about me. Conveniently enough, YT thinks.
Anyway, I floated for a couple of days. Got real thirsty. Ended up washing ashore on Kodiak Island. By this time I was real sick with the DTs and everything else. But I washed up near a Russian Orthodox church and they found me, took me in, and straightened me out. And that was when I saw that the Western American lifestyle had come this close to killing me.
Here comes the sermon.
And I saw that we can only live through faith, living a simple lifestyle. No booze, no television, none of that stuff.
So what are we doing in this place?
He shrugs.
This is an example of the bad places I used to hang out. But if you're going to get decent food on the raft, you have to come to a place like this.
A waiter approaches the table. His eyes are big, his movements tentative. He's not coming to take an order. He's coming to deliver bad news. Sir, you are wanted on the radio. I'm sorry.
Who is it?
Raven says. The waiter just looks around him like he can't even speak the name in public. It's very important, he says. Raven heaves a big sigh, grabs one last piece of fish and pokes it into his mouth. He stands up, and before YT can react, gives her a kiss on the cheek.
Honey, I got a job to do or something. Just wait right here for me, okay?
Here?
Nobody will fuck with you.
Raven says, as much for the benefit of the waiter as for YT. Gonna grab a little extra water. So we have learned some background about Raven, the Aleut, and murder machine extraordinaire. Alrighty. Chapter 51. The raft looks uncannily cheerful from a few miles away. A dozen searchlights, and at least that many lasers, are mounted on the towering superstructure of the Enterprise, waving back and forth against the clouds like a Hollywood premiere. Closer up, it doesn't look so bright and crisp. The vast, matted tangle of small boats radiates a murky cloud of yellow light that spoils the contrast. A couple of patches of the raft are burning. Not a nice cheery bonfire type of thing, but a high, burbling flame with black smoke sliding out of it, like you get from a large quantity of gasoline.
Gang warfare, maybe,
Elliot theorizes.
Energy source,
Hiro guesses.
Entertainment,
Fisheye says.
They don't have cable on the fucking raft.
Before they really plunge into hell, Elliot takes the lid off the fuel tank and slides the dipstick into there, checking the fuel supply. He doesn't say anything, but he doesn't look especially happy.
Turn off all the lights,
Elliot says when it seems they are still miles away.
Remember that we have already been sighted by several hundred or even several thousand people who are armed and hungry.
Vic is already going around the boat, shutting off lights via the simple expedient of a ball-peen hammer. Fisheye just stands there and listens intently to Elliot, suddenly respectful. Elliot continues.
Take off all the bright orange clothing, even if it means we get cold. From now on, we lay down on the decks, expose ourselves as little as possible, and we don't talk to each other unless necessary. Vic, you stay midships with your rifle and wait for someone to hit us with a spotlight. Anyone hits us with a spotlight from any direction, you shoot it out. That includes flashlights from small boats. Hiro, your job is gunwale patrol. You just keep going around the edges of the yacht, anywhere that a swimmer could climb up over the edge and slip on board, and when that happens, cut his arms off. Also, be on the lookout for any kind of grappling hook type stuff. Fisheye, if any other floating object comes within 100 feet of us, sink it. If you see raft people with antennas coming out of their heads, try to kill them first, because they can talk to each other.
Antennas coming out of their heads?
Hiro says. Yeah, raft gargoyle types, Elliot says. Who are they? How the fuck should I know? I've just seen 'em a few times from a distance. Anyway, I'm going to take us straight in towards the center, and once we get close enough, I'll turn to starboard and swing around the raft counterclockwise, looking for someone who might be willing to sell us fuel. If worst comes to worst and we end up on the raft itself, we stick together and we hire ourselves a guide. Because if we try to move across the raft without the help of someone who knows the web, we'll get into a bad situation.
Like what kind of bad situation?
Fisheye asks. Like hanging on a rotted out, slime covered cargo net between two ships rocking different ways with nothing underneath us except ice water full of plague rats, toxic waste, and killer whales. Any questions?
Yeah, Fisheye says. Can I go home now?
Good. If Fisheye is scared, so's Hiro. Remember what happened to the pirate named Bruce Lee, Elliot says. He was well armed and powerful. He pulled up alongside a life raft full of refuse one day, looking for some poontang, and he was dead before he knew it. Now there are a lot of people who want to do that to us.
Don't they have some kind of cops or something?
Vic says.
I heard they did.
In other words, Vic has killed a lot of time going to raft movies in Times Square. The people up on the Enterprise operate in kind of a Wrath of God mode, Elliot says. They have big guns mounted around the edge of the flight deck. Big Gatling guns like Reason, except with larger bullets. They were originally put there to shoot down exocet missiles. They strike with the force of a meteorite. People act up on the raft, they will make the problem go away. But a little murder or riot isn't enough to get their attention. If it's a rocket duel between rival pirate organizations, that's different. Suddenly, they've been nailed with a spotlight so big and powerful they can't look anywhere near it. Then it's dark again, and a gunshot from Vic's rifle is searing and reverberating across the water.
Nice shooting, Vic,
Fisheye says.
It's like one of them drug dealer boats,
Vic says, looking through his magic sight.
5 guys on it, headed our way.
He fires another round.
Correction, 4 guys on it. Boom. Correction, they're not headed our way anymore. Boom.
A fireball erupts from the ocean 200 feet away.
Correction, no boat.
Fisheye laughs and actually slaps his thigh.
You recording all this, Hiro?
No, Hiro says, wouldn't come out.
Oh.
Fisheye seems taken aback, like this changes everything.
That's the first wave, Elliot says. Rich pirates looking for easy pickings. They've got a lot to lose, so they scare easy. Another big yacht type boat is out there, Vic says, but they're turning away now.
Above the deep, chortling noise of their yacht's big diesel, they can hear the high whine of outboard motors.
Second wave, Elliot says. Pirate wannabes. These guys will come in a lot faster, so stay sharp. This thing is millimeter wave on it,
Fisheye says. Hiro looks at him. His face is illuminated from below by the glow of Reason's built-in screen.
I can see these guys like it's fucking daylight.
Vic fires several rounds, pops the clip out of his rifle, shoves in a new one. A Zodiac zips past, skittering across the wavetops, strafing them with weak flashlight beams. Fisheye fires a couple of short bursts from Reason, blasting clouds of warm steam into the cold night air, but misses them.
Save your ammo, Elliot says. Even with Uzis, they can't hit us until they slow down a little bit. And even with radar, you can't hit them.
A second Zodiac whips past them on the other side, closer than the last one. Vic and Fisheye both hold their fire. They hear it orbiting them, swinging back around the way it came.
Those 2 boats are getting together out there, Vic says. They got 2 more of them, a total of 4. They're talking.
We've been reconned, Elliot says, and they're planning their tactics. The next time is for real. A second later, 2 fantastically loud blasts sound from the rear of the yacht, where Elliot is, accompanied by brief flashes of light. Hiro turns around to see a body collapsing to the deck. It's not Elliot.
Elliot is crouching there, holding his oversized halibut shooter. Hiro runs back, looks at the dead swimmer in the dim light scattering off the clouds. He's naked, except for a thick coating of black grease and a belt with a gun and a knife in it. He's still holding on to the rope that he used to pull himself on board. The rope is attached to a grappling hook that is caught in the jagged, broken fiberglass on one side of the yacht.
Third wave is coming a little early,
Elliot says, his voice high and shaky. He's trying so hard to sound cool that it has the opposite effect.
Hiro, this gun's got 3 rounds left in it, and I'm saving the last one for you if any more of these motherfuckers get on board.
Sorry, Hiro says. He draws the short wakizashi. He would feel better if he could carry his 9 in the other hand, but he needs one hand free to steady himself and keep from falling overboard. He makes a quick circuit of the yacht, looking for more grappling hooks, and actually finds one on the other side, hooked into one of the railing stanchions, a taut rope trailing out behind it into the sea. Correction, it's a taut cable. His sword won't cut it, and the tension on the rope is such that he can't get it unhooked from the stanchion. As he's squatting there, playing with the grappling hook, a greasy hand rises up out of the water and grabs his wrist. Another hand gropes for Hiro's other hand and grabs the sword instead. Hiro yanks the weapon free, feeling it do damage, and shoves the wakizashi point first into the place between those two hands as someone is sinking his teeth into Hiro's crotch. But Hiro's crotch is protected. The motorcycle outfit has a hard plastic cup, and so this human shark just gets a mouthful of bulletproof fabric. Then his grip loosens, and he falls into the sea. Hiro releases the grappling hook and drops it in with him. Vic fires 3 rounds in quick succession, and a fireball illuminates one whole side of the ship. For a moment, they can see everything around them for a distance of 100 yards, and the effect is like turning on your kitchen lights in the middle of the night and finding your countertops aswarm with rats. At least a dozen small boats are around them.
They got Molotov cocktails,
Vic says. The people in the boats can see them too. Tracers fly around them from several directions. Hiro can see muzzle flashes in at least 3 places. Fisheye opens up once, twice with reason, just firing short bursts of a few dozen rounds each, and produces 1 fireball. This one farther away from the yacht. It's been at least 5 seconds since Hiro moved, so he checks to this area for grappling hooks again and resumes his circuit around the edge of the yacht. This time it's clear. The 2 grease balls must have been working together. A Molotov cocktail arcs through the sky and impacts on the starboard side of the yacht, where it's not going to do much damage. Inside would be a lot worse. Fisheye uses reason to hose down the area from which the Molotov was thrown, but now that side of the boat is all lit up from the flames. They draw more small arms fire. In that light, Hiro can see trickles of blood running down from the area where Vic ensconced himself. On the port side, he sees something long and narrow and low in the water, with the torso of a man rising out of it. The man has long hair that falls down around his shoulders, and he's holding an 8-foot pole in one hand. Just as Hiro sees him, he's throwing it. The harpoon darts across 20 feet of open water. The million chipped facets of its glass head refract in the light and make it look like a meteor. It takes Fisheye in the back, slices easily through the bulletproof fabric he's wearing under his suit, and comes all the way out the other side of his body. The impact lifts Fisheye into the air and throws him off the boat. He lands face first in the water, already dead. Mental note: Raven's weapons do not show up on radar. Hiro looks back in the direction of Raven, but he's already gone. A couple more grease balls, side by side, vault over the railing about 10 feet forward of Hiro, but for a moment they're dazzled by the flames. Hiro pulls out his 9, aims it their way, and keeps pulling the trigger until both of them have fallen back into the water. He's not sure how many rounds are left in the gun now. There's a coughing, hissing noise, and the flame light gets dim and finally goes out. Elliot nailed it with a fire extinguisher. The yacht jerks out from under Hiro's feet, and he hits the deck with his face and shoulder. Getting up, he realizes that either they've just rammed or been rammed by something big. There is a thudding noise, feet running on the deck. Hiro hears some of these feet near him, drops his wakizashi, pulls his katana, whirls at the same time, snapping the long blade into someone's midsection. Meanwhile, they're dragging a long knife down his back, but it doesn't penetrate the fabric, just hurts a little. His katana comes free easily, which is dumb luck because he forgot to squeeze off the blow. Could have gotten it wedged in there. He turns again, instinctively parries a knife thrust from another grease ball, raises the katana, and snaps it down into his brain pan. This time he does it right, kills him without sticking the blade. There are grease balls on two sides of him now. Hiro chooses a direction, swings it sideways, decapitates one of them. Then he turns around. Another grease ball is staggering toward him across the pitching deck with a spiked club, but unlike Hiro, he's not keeping his balance. Hiro shuffles up to meet him, keeping his center of gravity over his feet, and impales him on the katana. Another grease ball is watching all of this in astonishment, up near the bow. Hiro shoots him, and he collapses to the deck. Two more grease balls jump off the boat voluntarily. The yacht is tangled up in a spider's web of shitty old ropes and cargo nets that were stretched out across the surface of the water as a snare for poor suckers like them. The yacht's engine is still straining, but the prop isn't moving. Something got wrapped around the shaft. There's no sign of Raven now. Maybe it was just a one-time contract hit on Fisheye. Maybe he didn't want to get tangled up in the spiderweb. Maybe he figured that, once reason was taken out, the grease balls would take care of the rest. Elliot's no longer at the controls. He's no longer even on the yacht. Hiro calls out his name, but there's no response, not even thrashing in the water. The last thing he did was lean over the edge with the fire extinguisher, putting out the Molotov flame. When they were jerked to a halt, he must have tumbled overboard. They're a lot closer to the Enterprise than he had ever thought. They covered a lot of water during the fight, got closer in than they should have. In fact, Hiro's surrounded on all sides by the raft at this point. Meager, flickering illumination is provided by the burning remains of the Molotov cocktail-carrying Zodiacs, which have become tangled in the net around them. Hiro does not think it would be wise to take the yacht back out toward open water. It's a little too competitive there. He goes up forward. The suitcase that serves as Reason's power supply and ammo dump is open on the deck next to him, its color monitor screen reading, "Sorry, a fatal system error occurred. Please reboot and try again." Then, as Hiro's looking at it, it fritzes out completely and dies of a snow crash. Vic got hit by one of the machine gun bursts and is also dead. Around them, half a dozen other boats ride on the waves, caught in the spiderweb. Nice-looking yachts, all of them. But they are all empty hulks, stripped of their engines and everything else. Just like duck decoys in front of a hunter's blind. A hand-painted sign rides on a buoy nearby, reading "Fuel" in English and other languages. Further out to sea, a number of the ships that were chasing them earlier are lingering, steering well clear of the spiderweb. They know they can't come in here. This is the exclusive domain of the black grease swimmers, the spiders in the web, almost all of whom are now dead. If he goes onto the raft itself, it can't be any worse. Can it? The yacht has its own little dinghy, the smallest size of inflatable Zodiac, with a small outboard motor. Hiro gets it into the water. "I go with you," a voice says. Hiro whirls, hauling out his gun, and finds himself aiming it into the face of the Filipino cabin boy. The boy blinks, looks a little surprised, but not especially scared. He has been hanging out with pirates, after all. For that matter, all the dead guys on the yacht don't seem to faze him either. "I be your guide," the boy says. "Bala zinka nupa rata."
Oh boy.
So, as I've been intimating, towards the end of this book, shit gets real. And I dare say, the shit has gotten real. I do actually have an additional image here. That's not it. There it is. Let me turn off the so it's a little easier. This is an image I was able to find that somebody did up of Raven. It's pretty good. It's even got it right down to the poor impulse control tattoo on his forehead. What is his name? Let me just double check. Their name. It could be a she. No, that's the wrong one. Properties. Here we go. Patrick Contrarian. So props to Patrick Contrarian for doing an image of Raven. It looks pretty good. Let's see. Oh, one sec, I gotta sneeze. Or not. That's fine. God, that's gotta be nearly the worst feeling in the world, is wanting to sneeze and then it just doesn't happen. Okay, so now is the point at which I say there are some moderately graphic depictions of fictional sexy time, and if your young ears cannot handle it, then it is probably a good idea to just not listen for about the next 5-10 minutes. But it does reveal an important aspect of YT and Raven's relationship. Oh boy, howdy. So if this doesn't get me banned, nothing will. So again, this is not necessarily for the faint of heart, but it is what it is. Sex happens in the real world, and it happens in fictional worlds too. So get over it. It's not like it's that graphic, right? Right? Maybe. But it is a couple pages long. Um, I've read more graphic stuff by Eric von Lustbader, the guy who wound up picking up doing writing for the Born series, Born Identity, Born whatever, and so on and so forth. He's been doing most of, I think that's Eric von Lustbader has done most of the recent continuations of that series, the novels anyway. Um, no, I'm second guessing and saying maybe it's not. Maybe Eric von Lustbader is the one who was doing modern Bond novels, James Bond novels. No, I'm pretty sure it was the Bourne series. Let me double check. I've got a couple of them. One sec. I gotta hump over to my wall here, my library here. No. Huh. If I have to actually dig through these, I'm not gonna bother. I'll just deal with it. In any case, Eric von Lustbader. I swear to God, half his books are attempts at doing like selling, um, peddling, borderline pornography, a la like something you'd write into Playboy or Hustler or whatever. They're lurid. This is less so, but it is still there. So warning: sexy time is imminent. Between a tall murder machine and a young, not murder machine. I'm gonna get some more water in me. So this is gonna be awkward. Chapter 52. YT waits so long that she thinks the sun must have come up by now, but she knows it can't really be more than a couple of hours. In a way, it doesn't even matter. Nothing ever changes. The music plays, the cartoon videotape rewinds itself and starts up again. Men come in and drink and try not to get caught staring at her. She might as well be shackled to the table anyway, so there's no way she could find her way back home from here. So she waits. Suddenly, Raven's standing in front of her. He's wearing different clothes, wet, slippery clothing made out of animal skins or something. His face is red and wet from being outside.
You get your job all done?
Sort of, Raven says. I did enough.
What do you mean, enough?
I mean, I don't like being called out of a date to do bullshit work, Raven says. So I got things in order out there, and my attitude is, let his gnomes worry about the details.
Well, I've been having a great time here.
Sorry, baby. Let's get out of here, he says, speaking with the intense, strained tones of a man with an erection. Let's go to the core, he says, once they get to the cool air above deck.
What's there?
Everything, he says. The people who run this whole place. Most of these people, he waves his hand out over the raft, can't go there. I can. Want to see it?
Sure, why not?
She says, hating herself for sounding like such a sap. But what else is she going to say? He starts leading her down a long moonlit series of gangplanks in toward the big ships in the middle of the raft. You could almost skate here, but you'd have to be really good.
Why are you different from the other people? YT says.
She kind of blurts it out without doing a whole lot of thinking first, but it seems like a good question. He laughs. I'm an Aleut. I'm different in a lot of ways.
No, I mean your brain works in a different way, YT says. You're not whacked out. You know what I mean? You haven't mentioned the word all night.
We have a thing we do in kayaks. It's like surfing, Raven says.
Really? I surf too, in traffic,
YT says. We don't do this for fun, Raven says. It's part of how we live. We get from island to island by surfing on waves.
Same here, YT says, except we go from one franchulate to the next by surfing on cars.
See, the world is full of things more powerful than us. But if you know how to catch a ride, you can go places, Raven says.
Right. I'm totally hip to what you're saying.
That's what I'm doing with the orthos. I agree with some of their religion, but not all of it. But their movement has a lot of power. They have a lot of people and money and ships.
And you're surfing on it.
Yeah,
That's cool. I can relate. What are you trying to do? I mean, what's your real goal?
they're crossing a big, broad platform. Suddenly, he's right behind her. His arms are around her body, and he draws her back into him. Her toes are just barely touching the ground. She can feel his cool nose against her temple and his hot breath coming into one ear. It sends a tingle straight down to her toes. Short-term goal or long-term goal? Raven whispers.
Long term.
I used to have this plan. I was going to nuke America.
Oh, well, that'd be kind of harsh,
She says.
Maybe. Depends on what kind of a mood I'm in. Other than that, no long-term goals.
Every time he whispers something, another breath tickles her ear.
How about medium term then?
In a few hours, the raft comes apart, Raven says. We're headed for California, looking for a decent place to live. Some people might try to stop us. It's my job to help the people make it safe and sound up onto the shore. So you might say I'm going to war.
Oh, that's a shame, she mumbles.
So it's hard to think of anything besides the here and now.
Yeah, I know.
I rented a nice room to spend my last night in, Raven says. It's got clean sheets.
Not for long, she thinks. She had thought that his lips would be cold and stiff, like a fish, but she's shocked at how warm they are. Every part of his body feels hot, like that's his only way of keeping warm up in the Arctic. About 30 seconds into the kiss, he bends down, wraps his great thigh-sized forearms around her waist, cinches her up into the air, and lifting her feet up off the deck. She was afraid he would take her to some horrible place, but it turns out he rented a whole shipping container, stacked way up high on one of the container ships in the core. The place is like a luxury hotel for big core wheels. She's trying to decide what to do with her legs, which are now dangling uselessly. She's not quite ready to wrap them around him, not this early in the date. Then she feels them spreading apart. Way, way apart. Raven's thighs must be bigger around than his waist. He has lifted one leg up onto her crotch and put the foot up on a chair so she's straddling his thigh, and with his arms he's holding her body up against him, squeezing and relaxing, so that she's helplessly rocking back and forth, all her weight on her crotch. Some huge muscle, the upmost part of his quadricep, angles up where it attaches to the bone in his pelvis, and as he rocks her in closer and tighter, she ends up straddling that, shoved against it so tight that she can feel the seams in the crotch of her coverall, feel the coins in the key pocket of Raven's black jeans. When he slides his hands downward, still pressing her inward, and squeezes her butt in both hands, so big it must be like squeezing an apricot, fingers so long they wrap around and push up into her crack and she rocks forward to get away from it, but there's nowhere to go except into his body, her face breaking away from the kiss and sliding against the perspiration of his broad, smooth, whiskerless neck. She can't help letting out a yelp that turns into a moan, and then she knows he's got her. Because she never makes noises during sex, but this time she can't help it. It's not all this corny, I swear. It gets worse. And once she's decided that, she's impatient to get on with it. She can move her arms, she can move her legs, but the middle part of her body is pinned in place. It's not going to move until Raven moves it. And he's not going to move it until she makes him want to. So she goes to work on his ear. That usually does it. He tries to get away from her. Raven, trying to run away from something. She likes that idea. She has arms that are as strong as a man's, strong from hanging on to that poon on the freeway, so she wraps them around his head like a vice, and presses her forehead against the side of his head, and starts orbiting the tip of her tongue around the little folded-over rim of his outer ear. He stands paralyzed for a couple of minutes, breathing shallowly, while she works her way inward, and when she finally shoves her tongue into his ear canal, ow, he bucks and grunts like he's just been harpooned, lifts her up off his leg, kicks the chair across the room so hard it cracks against the steel wall of the shipping container. She feels herself falling backward toward the futon, thinks for a moment she's about to get crushed beneath him, but he catches all the weight on his elbows, except for his lower body, which slams into hers all at once, sending another electric shot of pleasure up her back and down her legs. Her thighs and calves have been turned solid and tight, like they've been pumped full of juice. She can't relax them. Oh, juice, maybe like electric current, I don't know. He leans up on one elbow, separating their bodies for a moment, plants his mouth on hers to maintain the contact, fills her mouth with his tongue, holds her there with it, while he one-hands the fastener at the collar of her coverall and yanks the zipper all the way down to the crotch. It's open now, exposing a broad V of skin converging from her shoulders. He rolls back onto her, grabs the top of her coverall with both hands and pulls it down behind her. I'm not sure I'm imagining the coverall properly. Forcing her arms down and to her sides, stuffing the mass of fabric and pads down underneath the small of her back so she stays arched up toward him. Then he's in between her tight thighs, all those skating muscles strained to the limit, and his hands come back inside to squeeze her butt again.
This time his hot skin against hers, like it's sitting on a warm buttered griddle. What? Makes the whole body feel warmer. What? Warm buttered griddle? What? There's something she's supposed to remember at this point, something she has to take care of, something important. One of those dreary duties that always seems so logical when you think about it in the abstract, and, at moments like this, seems so utterly beside the point that it never even occurs to you. It must be something to do with birth control, or something like that. But YT is helpless with passion, so she has an excuse. So she squirms and kicks her knees until the coverall and her panties have slid down to her ankles. Raven gets completely naked in about 3 seconds. He pulls his shirt off over his head and throws it somewhere, bucks out of his pants and kicks them off and onto the floor. His skin is as smooth as hers, like the skin of a mammal that swims through the sea, but he feels hot, not cold and fishy. She doesn't see his cock, but she doesn't want to. What's the point, right? She does something she's never done before. Comes as soon as he goes into her. It's like a bolt of lightning, shoots out from the middle, down the backs of her tensed legs, up her spine, into her nipples. She sucks in air until her whole rib cage is poking out through the skin, and then screams it all out. She just rips one. Raven's probably deaf now, which is his fucking problem. She goes limp. So does he. He must have come at the same time, which is okay. It's early, and poor Raven was horny as a goat from being out to sea. Later on, she'll expect more endurance. Right now, she's content to lie underneath him and suck the warmth out of his body. She's been cold for days. Her feet are still cold, hanging out in the air, but that just makes the rest of her feel much better. Raven seems content too, uncharacteristically so. Talk about bliss. Most guys would already be flipping through channels on the TV. Not Raven. He's content to lie here all night, breathing softly into her neck. As a matter of fact, he's gone to sleep right on top of her, like something a woman would do. She dozes too, lies there for a minute or two, all these thoughts going through her head. This is a pretty nice place, like a mid-priced business hotel in the valley. She never figured anything like this existed on the raft. But there's rich people and poor people here too, just like anywhere else. When they came to a certain place on the walkway, not far from the first of the big core ships, there was an armed guard blocking the way. He let Raven go on through, and Raven took YT with him, leading her by the hand, and the guard gave her a look, but he didn't say anything. He was keeping most of his attention on Raven. After that, the walkway got a lot nicer. It was broad, like the boardwalk at the beach, and not quite so crowded with old Chinese ladies carrying gigantic bundles on their backs. And it didn't smell like shit quite so much. When they got to the first core ship, there was a stairway that took them from sea level up to its deck. From there, they took a gangplank across to the innards of another ship, and Raven led her through the place like he'd been through it a million times, and eventually they crossed another gangplank into this container ship. And it was just like a fucking hotel in there. Bellhops with white gloves carrying luggage for guys in suits, a registration desk, everything. It was still a ship. Everything's made out of steel that has been painted white a million times over, but nothing like what she expected. There's even a little helipad where the suits can come and go. There's a chopper parked next to it with a logo she's seen before. Rife Advanced Research Enterprises. Rare. Rare. The people who gave her the envelope to deliver to Ebgok headquarters. All of this is fitting together now. The Feds and L. Bob Rife and the Reverend Wayne's Pearly Gates and the Raft are all part of the same deal. Who the hell are these people? She asked Raven when she first saw it, but he just shushed her. She asked him again later as they were wandering around looking for their room, and he told her. These guys all work for L. Bob Rife. Programmers and engineers and communications people. Rife is an important man. Got a monopoly to run. Rife's here? She asked him. Putting on an act, of course. She had it figured out by that point. Shh, he said. It's a nice piece of intel. Hiro should like it, if she can just get it to him. Even that's going to be easy.
She never thought there'd be metaverse terminals here on the raft, but on this ship there's a whole row of them, so that visiting suits can call back to civilization. All she has to do is get to one without waking up Raven, which could be tricky. It's too bad she couldn't drug him with something, like in the Raft movies. That's when the realization comes. It swims up out of her subconscious in the same way that a nightmare does. Or when you leave the house and remember half an hour later that you left a tea kettle going on the stove. It's a cold, clammy reality that she can't do a damn thing about. She has finally remembered what that nagging thing was that bothered her for a moment, right before the actual moment of fucking. It was not birth control. It was not a hygiene thing. It was her dentata, the last line of personal self-defense. Along with Uncle Enzo's dog tags, the one piece of stuff that the orthos didn't take. They didn't take it because they don't believe in cavity searches. Which means that at the moment Raven entered her, a very small hypodermic needle slipped imperceptibly into the engorged frontal vein of his penis, automatically shooting a cocktail of powerful narcotics and depressants into his bloodstream. Raven's been harpooned in the place where he least expected it. Now he's going to sleep for at least 4 hours. And then, boy, is he ever going to be pissed. And with that, I am going to have to call it. Because I do have to scoot. So yeah, we got through the squicky bits, namely turning a raft into a sea of blood and obliterating a bunch of people with a giant hypervelocity chain gun type, man-portable hypervelocity chain gun, rail chain gun thing, called Reason, with a capital R, thank you very much. It has a name. And of course, the momentous sex scene between YT and Raven, which ends in Raven, well, drugged through his dick. Woo! So, there's that. From here on, we get to the actual like plot and stuff, or the thrilling climax. Not the last one we had. We just had a climax. It's the meta climax, if you will, of the book. Hero's at the raft now, and we're gonna have some confrontations between people. All right. So that's gonna have to do it for me for today. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, just like maybe two more, uh, if I'm lucky, and I have an untrammeled schedule. Two more, worst case three. Um, and then we'll be done with Snow Crash, and from there I'll probably do some more short stories because God, I've got a million of them. Um, I haven't decided what actual book reading I'll wind up doing after. I've contemplated doing some of the Lensman series because I love that series. That series is so much fun. It's just this goofy. I say goofy. It's retro. It's kind of campy from a modern perspective, but like really ridiculous sci-fi from like the 40s. Um, Great series by E. Doc Smith. Um, but I think that one will be a lot of fun to do. Uh, Failing that, maybe keep doing some cyberpunk stuff, like Neuromancer, maybe. Uh, Neuromancer is a classic. Um, that one's kind of a hard one to read, so that'll be a bit daunting, but we'll see. Um, I also considered doing The Electric Church by Jeff Summers, but that series is really depressing. So, like, it winds up, it's like, how many books long and a couple extra short stories? It's at least 5 books long. and each one basically ends with the end of the world in some capacity, and they just keep getting grimmer to the point where it's like, okay, we get it. You're edgy. You're edgy, and everybody's dead. Everybody's dead, Dave. Everybody's dead. Um, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So for anyone tuning in for the first time, I am Fraggeth. I narrate these every Saturday. Um, every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And unless something happens that I can't, all my stuff is uploaded, and I stream simultaneously to YouTube, Twitch, Mixer, and Facebook. All this stuff should be on YouTube, so just hunt me down there. I should really post links in my video descriptions. That would be smart. Um, I also do other streams throughout the week. I do a Mecha Mondays stream where I do something giant robot or mecha adjacent. Um, Giant robot related or mecha adjacent. Coming up this coming Mecha Monday, we now have Daemon X Machina out and released on Steam, so I will be doing a run through of that, putting a temporary hold on MechWarrior 5 run. And I also do a Warframe Wednesdays run slot stream where I do just do Warframe stuff for a couple hours every Wednesday. All of them starting at about noon Eastern Standard Time. All right, that'll do it for me. Thanks for tuning in, and geez, have a great week. Bye.